Do you wish you could travel more but you don't because it's so expensive?
Keep watching and we'll tell you one of the best ways to save money when you travel.
Hello, welcome to week 60 of Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa. And we have one more travel tip to share with you today. So let's get right into it. Traveling may seem expensive sometimes, and vacations, well, some people may not go on vacation very often because it just costs too much money, especially as your family gets larger and larger. That was the case with my family. We used to go out to Washington every year to visit family, and then as our family got bigger and bigger, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kids, and still going, it just became too expensive, and we'd go like once every 2 years or once every 3 years. Well, one of the best ways actually to save money when you go on trips or vacations is to plan vacations around places where you know people. And actually, most of the trips I take, I go somewhere because somebody knows me there and asked me to come, or I knew they were there and I asked if I could come and visit. Very rarely do I just go anywhere where I don't know anybody already. That almost never happens. So we're going to show you some of the places that we have gone because of people we know. Here we see the Balasas, who we visited last November down in Arizona. It was our first time in Arizona. We visited them. We also visited the Dales, and we visited the Englands, all families down there that we know. And at the same time, we went to the Grand Canyon and Sedona, but we were able to stay with the Balasas for a night because we knew them from school, and that saved us some money. When we go to the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum in Kentucky, we stay with an older couple there who we met a few years ago, and they provide our housing, so we never stay in a hotel or an Airbnb. We just stay with them.
They're kind of like adopted grandparents kind of people.
They give us some really nice southern meals. And
they're just really fun to hang out with too.
Yeah, we chat with them for a long time. And so that's how we save money when we go to these places in Kentucky. You want to tell them about why we went to Florida?
Well, that worked out nicely because my grandpa was celebrating his birthday, and so we went down to celebrate his birthday, and we got to stay with him and then see a couple more of my extended family members and just spend time at the beach and everything. But it didn't cost us that much, it just cost us our flights.
Yeah, so when you hear about people going to Florida, oftentimes it costs a lot and they're doing some really nice things. But we still went to the beach and we had a good time and did it down in Florida during January.
That was really nice.
And it was because we have family down there.
Yep.
Every year we go to Tennessee. We have people we know on both sides of Tennessee. If you know that Tennessee is extremely long. And so we know people on the west side, Alyssa's sister and brother-in-law and niece. And we know the Peaks, Riley and Kimberly and Janora and I forgot the other one's name now. Cassia. Yes, we know them on the east side of Tennessee, and we go and visit them, and as you can see here, they have some great scenery in their area. So we get to go and hike and see some beautiful waterfalls and overlooks and all sorts of things on their side, and we just stay with them.
My Ariba roommate, Lydia, lives in Hong Kong now, and so when I lived on Guam, it was much closer than it is from here. But we got to visit each other a couple different times while I lived out there, and it was great because I just got to stay with her. When she came to Guam, she came and stayed with me, and we got to spend a lot of time together. She lives in a really small place, So it's not like she had tons of space, but she was super gracious, and we squeezed into her little apartment, and we had lots of great adventures because she knew the area really well. So she knew the places that she wanted to take me to see and the times we should go there, and she's a really great planner. So she's like a built-in travel guide. She's the best person to travel with.
I've been to San Francisco, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, at least 3 so far. And there is a family who used to live there. They don't anymore, but I still know another family in the area. And I went there to visit them and to see their ministries and their churches. And along the way, got to go and visit the Golden Gate Bridge and some other sites. And I wouldn't have done that if I didn't know them. But because I did, I stayed with them and didn't have to pay any really expensive hotel fees. They took me around, showed me the places, so I didn't have to rent a car this time. It was great. San Francisco is a fun place to visit, and even better if you just stay with people you know.
My roommate from Guam, Carrie, and I knew some people in Europe, and so we planned a trip home for summer from Guam, and we traveled to 5 different countries in 17 days, and we spent significantly under $3,000 to do all that, including airfare. And it was because we got to stay with people we knew. We stayed with some really sweet missionaries. We stayed with a really great lady that had been involved with the church that Carrie's family had been with. We stayed in an Airbnb in one location, but all the other places we got to stay with people. And it's great because they have great ideas of where you can go or places you should see. Or good times to be there, or sometimes they even have like discount cards so you can get in discount admission or whatever to go somewhere.
Yes.
And it just kind of helped us see what ministry life was like in a different place. It was kind of fun to learn from each of them and hear what's a little bit unique about each place where they live.
Speaking of Carrie, when she got married a couple years ago, it was in West Virginia. And she got married on July 3rd, and so the day after, we realized before we went out, that July 4th was the day after the wedding, and we were within a couple hours of Washington, D.C. So how could we not go to Washington, D.C. on July the 4th? So we did, and we got to see a whole bunch of great things, and look at all the people there that we got to celebrate with.
Pretty sure we got rained on.
Yeah, we did. It was a wet day. But we stayed with the people at the wedding leading up to this, and then we left like a couple days later. So we didn't spend too much because we just stayed at some places nearby, but most of our time was what brought us out there in the first place was other people.
Before I went to Guam full-time, I went for a summer, and I had a little boy whose dad was a chef in Japan, and he came to Guam for the summer, was in my class, and he really loved me a lot. He learned a lot of English while he was there. Well, when I went back to Guam as a full-time teacher, I met up with his dad, again, randomly, because he was at a fancy hotel on Guam. He was like, "Oh, we have a house in Japan, you should come visit us sometime." And I was like, "Okay, I will." So I convinced another kindergarten teacher to come with me. And we went to Japan, and we went to Disney for a day, did the fun, like, super touristy thing, but then we went out with the family out to their, kind of like their summer home out in Hakone, Japan, which is right near Mount Fuji. So we got to experience Mount Fuji. They took us to some beautiful overlooks, and we got to do some, like, very unique Japanese things that we probably wouldn't have done on our own, just randomly because we ran into each other again.
In the Philippines, we know several people, but there is one particular family that our church supports, the Gonzalezes, and we visited them in their ministry. I got to speak at their church, and they housed us for a couple days. And Alyssa also went back while she was living on Guam to visit them and did some teaching things with them. And Filipinos are some of the most hospitable people in the world. And if you go and visit people you know, you basically won't pay anything. Just whatever it takes to get there most of the time. They'll cover everything else just because they want to make you feel at home. I went to Malta to visit some missionaries at a conference there and to do some photography for them. And I got to stay in a 5-star hotel. and got to ride a charter bus around to all these different sites on the island. And normally that would cost a lot of money because Malta's pretty touristy, but because I was doing it with all these missionaries, I got like a group rate and got to do all these things at a discounted price, and something I wouldn't have done on my own either.
Yep. Before Lydia moved to Hong Kong, she and her family lived in, well, not in Boston, but pretty close, within like a couple hours. And so I flew out to spend a week with her, and her whole family is the best tour guides. They packed our week full of so many different things and some museums that I wouldn't have thought of, and we got to go to a book signing at one place, and we got to see all sorts of things, and because they were so familiar with the area, we packed a lot of stuff in that week, and we had a great time.
When I was going to Bible college, I knew several missionary kids from Brazil. And I told myself, I am never going to go on a missions trip or consider doing missions in Brazil because there are so many missionaries down there, they don't need any more. Well, I didn't realize how big Brazil was and how needy they are for the gospel. And some missionaries in Brazil who my home church supports and who are also good friends with my family invited me to come down for a summer, so I did, and spent the time doing ministry with them. And 3 years later, I went back with my sister, and we did it all over again. And they were great hosts too, and made a trip to South America so much more affordable and enjoyable, along with getting to do a lot of neat ministry things because of their ministry down there.
After going on the Arriba program, Lydia and I went back to Peru for, I think, during a spring break time or something like that. And we got to stay with our Peruvian family again, which was a huge blessing. And we packed in the people in a taxi. That is just a 5-seater taxi, I'd like you to know.
Nice.
And there are a lot of us in there. My whole family, all 4 of them, and then 2 guys from our church, the guy in the front seat and the one who's sticking his head out right in the back seat, and then Lydia and I are in there. It was pretty cozy, but you know, that's what you do. If you want to pay the price and get to church cheaper, you just do that.
I've been to Africa twice now. Alyssa has been there one time with me after we got married, and it was because the missionaries over there invited us to come over and do a music camp, and so they provided the housing there and helped to get us around to different places. I just had to pay for the airfare basically and help with a little of the food and stuff, but made a trip to Africa very enjoyable and a lot less expensive than if I just wanted to go on a vacation there. And I got to go on a safari. We did, so we got to do some things that you would do probably if you went on vacation. Oregon, I have several family members on the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington. And this is in Oregon, and we visited them, and at the same time went to Cannon Beach, which is a very famous beach. And they found a place for us to stay there that it was probably a lot better deal than if we had just gone on our own. And so had to have a great family vacation out there because of our family who we knew. And we went to Ecuador one year. We were invited to go do some ministry down there with Chris Brown here in the picture. And so we got to stay with some church members down there and see some great sights in the capital city and some other larger cities in Ecuador while we were doing ministry there.
Yep.
And finally, we live up near Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota. And Paul and Jamie, my sister and brother-in-law, came and visited us last year. And we took them to one of our favorite sites. We got some wedding pictures here in front of this music wall. We took them to a Brazilian steakhouse. And so if you want to come visit us in the Twin Cities, we have ideas of things that you can do, and you can stay with us, and we can make your stay here a lot cheaper and more enjoyable.
Yep.
Now, some of you have larger families, and you say, well, this is nice if it's just 2 of you. Well, there are a lot of people around the world, and you know some people too, who can help you do a large family trip for much cheaper than you can on your own. So just because you might have more people in your family doesn't mean that all these things won't work for you. They will. And if you know missionaries, they are some of the best people to visit because they are all over the world, all over the country. They are some of the best tour guides. They can get you connected with people to stay with. And so if you know some, really get to know them well, go spend some time with them, and I don't think you'll regret it.
You can probably help them out with a project or two while you're there. That'll be a blessing to them too.
Yep.
Okay, we have our last part of our story today.
Okay. I can't wait because I don't know this story, so this is going to be a good one.
Yeah. It was really exciting. Or are you going to go have a snack?
Oh, yes.
Okay. It was really exciting at the end of our story last time because remember, we realized that his mom was at the airport too, and he was hearing her talking to some other people behind him, and he turned around and realized it was his mom. Well, it was really crazy at the airport because they were getting all of the kids onto the planes, and these aren't like normal planes like you're thinking of. This is like a cargo plane, so it's just a big empty space, and they were just putting children in there. Usually you would put like lots of boxes, but they were letting the kids ride this way and the helpers so that they could get them to a safe place in the United States. So we saw his mom, but he knew that they were going to start loading all the planes and it was going to have to happen really fast. So he just was really hoping at least he would get to see his mom once they landed again. Well, they called for Hui's plane to line up, and he got in line with all the kids his age, and he boarded the plane, and they selected different helpers to go with each of the planes. And guess what? Hui's mom was on his plane with him. He couldn't believe it. Look at how God had put all these pieces back together for his family. He was going to get to ride with his mother all the way to the United States. Well, the kids had like little mats on the floor that they could sit on or they could look out the window, and they were very excited to watch as their country disappeared as Vietnam went away and they started traveling across the ocean to their new home. So Hui sat down with his mom, and she had so many questions for him. So she asked him question after question after question. And Hui explained how he had taken care of his sister, how they had dug through garbages to find food, and how he had tried his best to take care of her. But then how Kohai had found them, and how she had taken care of them and given them food and a place to live. And then Hui was a little bit nervous, but he said, "But Mom, we don't give our food to the Buddha anymore, because we did, but now I believe that there is only one true God, and that the Buddha can't give us any more food, and he can't listen to us because he's just made out of something else, so we don't even have it anymore." And he could remember, as he's saying these things, he could remember his mother taking their Buddha and carefully wrapping it up and carrying it with her every time they packed up, way back at the beginning of the story when they were trying to get away from the soldiers each night. So he was a little nervous telling his mom this. He didn't know how she was going to respond. But she said, when I got away from those soldiers, I stayed with a family, and that family told me about Jesus, and I am believing in God too, just like you. And I think God has brought us back together again. She asked lots of questions about Kim, and we were sure that Kim would in time be able to remember their mother, because Kim had been so little when they'd been separated. So he wasn't sure exactly how Kim would respond when they first saw her. Well, the children called out that they saw the landing area for the airplane. They were all excited. Hui was excited. He just couldn't wait. He couldn't wait to see his sister again, and for his mother to see them again, his sister again too. And so the plane landed, and the children got off, and they were in the airport terminal, and they were all scared. So they all started huddling together. There was so much noise and bright lights and weird smells and so many white people everywhere. And they were just a little bit scared because everything was different. All the words and sounds were different. But calmly, the different leaders were helping line up each child with the new home and family they were going to stay with. And so one by one, the missionary would help the children go to their new family. And we just kept looking around, seeing if he could see someone who had his sister. He was hoping that they had brought her to the airport. Well, finally, he spotted his sister with a tall lady who looked a lot like the missionary, which makes sense because remember, his little sister was going to stay with the missionary's sister. So the missionary motioned her sister over, and she explained that Kim, who was asleep in the missionary's sister's arms, she said that Kim's mother was right here with Hui. And so right away, the missionary sister handed little Kim, sleeping Kim, to Hui's mother, and she hugged her so close, and she started crying because she was so happy to have little Kim back. And Kim kind of snuggled a little bit, and she opened her eyes, and she smiled, and Hui was so surprised. How could she smile? How could she even remember his mother? She had been so little. But Hui could stand it no more, and he called out, "Kim!" And she turned, and right away she pulled her arms out, and she was pulling for Hui so she could hold on to him and hug him. She definitely remembered Hui, and they had spent a lot of time together, and she had spent a lot of time with him especially. Well, they got back to the missionary's house that night to stay and to live there for a little bit, and everybody got ready for bed, and there were 2 other boys that were staying at the house with Hui, and they were sleeping on bunk beds. But to Hui, those beds looked really scary because they were up so high and there was nothing to keep those children from falling off. So he moved his mat on the floor way far away just in case one of those kids fell off of that bed. Well, that night, as he was lying on his mat and thinking about the day and all the things that God had done for them, he began to think, what if that missionary had just decided to stay in her beautiful house? What if she had always stayed here with her sister in this land where she had all the food she wanted, where there were no soldiers, there was no bad things happening? What if she just stayed here? Then Hui would have never heard the good news about Jesus, and his mother and him would have never been connected, reunited again, and they wouldn't be able to live in this great area and to be safe away from the soldiers. And we realized that that missionary was really unselfish, that she must have loved God so much that she left all of these things to go to a country where there were so many problems, to love the people, and to encourage them to love Jesus more. And we also began to think, why did Kim respond like that when his mother was holding her? And then he thought, I bet Kim was thinking that Mom was actually Kohai, because Kohai had hugged Kim many times and held her close. And she probably thought, before she even saw their mother's face, that maybe it was just Kohai holding her close. And that brought a good memory for little Kim, even before she remembered her mother. But he was hoping in time that little Kim would be able to remember her mother as well. And Hui also decided something. If that missionary could choose to give up so many things to tell people about Jesus, that he could also tell people about Jesus, that he could tell people how God loved the world so much that he sent his son, Jesus, to live a perfect life here on earth and then to die a terrible death on a cross and to be buried, because he really died, to be buried, but then 3 days later to show that he was more powerful than death and that God had accepted his sacrifice, he could come back from the dead. And we decided, I want to tell people while I'm here in America, waiting for all of the war to go away in my country, I want to tell the people here all about Jesus, and I want to learn as much as I can so I can go back to my country and tell more and more people about the love of God, so they don't have to worship the Buddhas and they don't have to be afraid. They can know who's in control of everything and how God can put their pieces back together. So that is our story of Li Hui's escape. And I hope you enjoyed that story. That was a really interesting story, a little bit more about Vietnam and kind of some of the tough stuff the tough things that happen in a country that's full of lots of war and problems.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we are going to review the people who we have looked at in the last few weeks. And we are going to start with Rhonda Green in Micronesia. She lives on Guam and ministers to people there and from all over the surrounding islands.
Yep. And she's staying really busy with her bus ministry, bringing in some kids, and she's so excited that she's able to bring in some of the island kids again to come to the different ministries. She can't bring all of them because they're still trying to social distance and stuff. But she gets to bring a few, and we're praying for her as she's doing Bible studies with a few different ladies on the island. She's very thankful that God provided a new vehicle for her recently, and that's really helpful because she does a lot of driving around.
Yep.
And so God is really taking care of her. and she's just praying that God will keep giving her opportunities to serve others.
Also in the Pacific Ocean, we have Pastor Ariel and Ina Abadiano serving in the Philippines. They minister to people all over the country, primarily in the area of leadership training and teaching people how to more effectively share the gospel. And right now, Pastor Ariel is working with several online virtual trainings. He does some early, like, is it Monday or Tuesday morning, like 5:30 in the morning. And there's lots and lots of people who are attending that. And so that's a praise. And he is looking for more opportunities to train people, so you can be praying for those and that people would be eager to learn and to use what they are being taught. And also for the children who they serve in their neighborhood. And Mrs. Abadiano works a lot with them, and they use those kids to reach into the families as they minister to all of them. My brother Jesse is going to Arizona in a few weeks and taking some people with him to do ministry at one of the churches down there in Phoenix. And so pray for their opportunities to minister to not only the church but also people in the community. Hopefully make some more connections for the church to reach out as they want to do like a VBS or something to get kids in there and then reach the families through them as well. And pray for Jesse as he works with Pastor Wayne Dale to organize this ministry, that everything would go smoothly and that it would really be an encouragement and a help to the church there.
We talked about Roberto and Patricia Coelho in Brazil and their family. And they're really excited just to be back in Brazil after their furlough and to probably be finishing up school for the kids by now. Mm-hmm. And they're still praying about the money to finish some of the inside projects for their church building. And then just continue prayer as they look for the right timing to be able to go back to church and for health of their different members and for all the different Bible studies that their assistant pastor got going while they were gone, for those to be continued, and then the relationship that they're building with their contractor who's working on their church building, that he and his family would be more interested in the gospel. Mm-hmm. And hopefully at some point trust Christ as their Savior too.
Yeah, and it's a praise that they are making a lot of good progress on their church building, and also that Mr. Coelho was able to graduate with his doctorate recently.
That's true.
That's a lot to be thankful for.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you come back next week for another story.
Mm-hmm. And Alyssa hid something, so if you didn't find it, it's probably hidden really well, and you just need to rewind and look for it again. But we look forward to seeing you next week. Glad you would join us once again, and we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Bye.